Welcome to the Basketry Museum. This year we decided that we would do a series of videos showing the different displays in the museum. It seemed an interesting way to show people a museum, and we can look at the various displays in various videos. Now for the first video, I thought we would choose the indigenous baskets that we have in the museum. You'll see I have various decorative and functional baskets and toys, and for my talk today I thought we would look a little at the tradition of basketry in this country, and we could look at the various types of baskets that we used at that time, beginning of time. Before Christopher Columbus came, of course, they didn't have Walmart and they didn't have Amazon, and the stores were the world outside, the lakes, mountains and the hills, and they would go and collect their materials and use them to make functional objects. Now, as time went on and as more people came to this country, they realized their baskets were beautiful and they could sell them and make money and use the money to buy tools and useful kitchenware. And so mostly I think women made beautiful decorative baskets, and this was a way that they could support their families. And so for many of us now, we forget about the functional baskets that they used, and we think of the lovely ones they made with black ash and spruce roots and cedar. So for this reason, I decided that rather than doing my talk on all indigenous baskets, I thought we would look at the functional baskets in this video, and then in the next video we would look at the beautiful decorative baskets, which are still made by the indigenous people, but of course they had another purpose, and their purpose was to support their families. So the first functional basket I thought I would show you is one that came from the west coast, and this, and some of you may recognize, is made of cedar, and this is the cedar bark on the outside, and when the cedar's cut in the spring, the bark peels off, and it's been cut in the spring, and the outside bark has been taken away to show the inner bark here, and it has been split here and divided and tied up on this bar. Now you might be wondering why I'm showing you this, but the fun thing is I always ask people when they come to the museum, what is it used for? And I give them a clue. I say it's used when you're on the water in a canoe or in a boat. And then you start to think you could take the water like this and throw it over the edge. And so it was a Baylor. It was used for bailing their canoes and made from the bushes. But what a wonderful object this is, where form follows function. Very useful, very easy to make, and it probably would have lasted for years and years, made straight from the trees. The next baskets we're going to look at are made from black ash, and I'm sure when they discovered that the black ash could be split and made into splints, it opened the most wonderful doors for the native people in this country. The black ash is a tree that grows all over our continent, and as it grows in the sort of wet, damp areas, you can go and sometimes if you're looking for them, you look up into the sky, you'll see, before the leaves come out of course, the twigs are rather ugly and blunt as compared to the other ash trees, and the bark is corky. Now to make black ash you need to find a tree that's about this big, and it needs to be growing straight, not with a curl, because of course the curl means that the splints come up not straight. And then it's cut down, they remove the bark and they hammer it. And I thought you might like to see this because it's a real genuine, this is a black ash hammerer. Wonderful weapon really, it's heavy. And they have to hit the tree all the way up and down the tree to loosen the different layers that are within the tree so they can take the splints off. Once they've loosened them, they make a cut in the end, and on the ground you pull it up, and each splint comes up on its own in different layers. And then of course it takes quite a long time. You have to smooth the splint and thin it down and divide it and split it, and it turns into fine beautiful splints like this. Now this is a functional basket, and it was made for washing corn. It was made by Richard Nolan, who lives south of Montreal, and he very kindly gave this to the museum. See how beautifully even, it's got his name on the bottom here, how beautifully even and smooth it is. And that was a growing tree. That would have been a very functional basket in times gone by, with a very functional handle. Fill it with corn, and they used it for washing corn. It's quite well known. And I popped this little one in too. It's a little berry basket for children to collect berries in the spring or the summer, but also made with the split black ash. And it's just woven, quite a simple weave, but quite sweet. And of course they make much bigger ones. They use a lot of split ash for their lovely baskets, but we're looking at functional ones at the moment. The next one I thought we would look at is quite a fun one, actually. And this is something else that you might be able to guess. I don't know whether you can. I always ask my guests when they come to the museum if they can guess. It's got a little corn top. And it's made with corn husks, which have been braided first of all, and then coiled and stitched round and round, stitched round and round. I think they probably had a shape to start with, but they wouldn't have been able to have a shape up here, otherwise they wouldn't have been able to take it out. And then this is a little stopper that goes in the top. Now this is a very functional basket, and it was used in the kitchen. And I found this down at Six Nations in Brantford, and it was made, I think, for their tourist shop, but it was still a functional basket. And it was used, can anybody guess, keeping something dry, something that gets hard and wet in the summer, salt. And so they put their salt in here, and because it's made of dry corn husks, the salt would stay dry inside, and they would be able to keep it in the summer without it going hard. And then here's a little stopper that goes in. It's rather fun, isn't it? Just fits in the top. So that's a very functional kitchen basket, just to hold the salt in your kitchen. And I think that's a delightful little piece. Now the next one we have is really a mystery basket. And the mystery basket, I was really thrilled to be given this basket. It was found in a local barn close by, and it was obviously an agricultural basket used for gathering and collecting. And the interesting thing about this basket is that it is made of split ash all the way, rather roughly split. You can see the difference between the split. But it's a little bit different because it was made by an indigenous basket maker here in the 60s, but he's used a willow branch, a willow rod, for the top. And why this is an interesting basket, it combines both the tradition of the settlers, which was to use willow and alder, and of course the indigenous people who would have used the split ash. So I find it a very interesting basket. It's a mixture of two cultures. And the interesting thing is, it has got the most clever handles. I bet you can't see the handles on this basket. If I show you all the sides, you won't be able to guess how they carried it. And it took me a long time to discover. And the way they made it is to leave these two, this weaver here and this weaver out, so that you actually carried it like this or like this. It's very clever. It's been put in afterwards. So the basket was woven and then these were added, which is a very clever way of a handle. And of course it's good and strong. You could probably fill this with apples or potatoes. And it's a really useful basket. It also had, the bottom's getting a little delicate now, but it also does have extra runners on the bottom, if you can see. These have been added afterwards to make it doubly strong on the bottom. So this is a really functional basket. And I don't know, it probably was made in about the 60s locally. And it's a very, very functional indigenous basket, which I think is very exciting, because I didn't have any baskets that were functionally agricultural baskets in my collection. Now I have this one. So that is very exciting. The native children in this country would have made their own toys and baskets from the materials, and although these aren't really baskets, they're fun little things were made. These are cattails, and they were made, and they would of course the indigenous people didn't have faces on their baskets. You had to guess the faces. And then the duck. And these really do float. And he is all cattails, which you'll probably recognise. And the other thing that is sort of fun, and I'm sorry I haven't got a little thing of water to show you, but we make these sometimes with children, little tiny ones, and they float. They're looking a bit sad now, but we make them, we wrap them up. They're made with cattails. Can you see that little one? And he floats underwater, and children can make them. So it's sort of fun to see what could be made in the bushes without having to go shopping. So these, I love these little things. Now these are sort of a derivation of baskets because they're actually made with tamarack. And of course these are very, very functional because they were made as decoys, and they would put them out when the geese were going overhead, and it would bring the geese down to see who was on the lake. And the trick is the eye. Apparently the eye was what they would see as they were flying by. And they are made beautifully with tamarack, tightly woven, and then with black linen thread. And those were very functional. They were used, and of course they are now made for people as well, but I love them, and I think they're beautifully made little, I have a whole flock. We've made them in the museum. It's hard to find tamarack that's pliable enough. Most tamarack is thicker and heavier. We need very thin, but these are little thin ones. So there's the sweet. So I think those are the functional baskets that we've got here. And I'm always looking for old baskets that are functional, because I do think that they're the treasures of the past, and so many of them have gone now. But it's lovely to be able to find baskets that were made to use, and I think it's a part of the tradition that's interesting. And the next video we'll be looking at the decorative baskets, which of course are very much more beautiful and beautifully made, but they were made for a different purpose. They were made as tourist items rather than items that were functional and useful.